Okay, so, hello everybody, I'm Lillian, as I mentioned before. Basically, what I want to focus on is Indigenous student support services at the University of South Pacific. In other words, is that it's also just for you to have a fair idea, this is where knowledge sharing comes in, but a fair idea of how our students think, when they, what is the psychological framework, and what support services they expect. So you can, as coordinators or as study abroad advisors, so when you're dealing with a student from either, just say Fiji, or Samoa, or Tonga, you have a fair idea of what their psychological framework is really, all right? So just very quickly, this is the university's vision, mission, and values. Now, I want you to focus on a few keywords. We're talking about Pacific futures, sustainable communities. Also for the mission, we're talking about Pacific Islanders improve the lives of individuals and communities. And of course, our values. We talk about Pacific values and inclusive families. So this is what the university is all about. We're about communities, and the keyword is sustainability. So just very quickly, just so you have a fair idea of what the university is all about, over 20,000 students, approximately, 48 nationalities, over 1,500 staff. Language of instruction is English, which is why we can have partnerships with our universities here. And we're a multicultural community, 12 member countries, 14 campuses, 10 centers. So I must say we are rich in vibrant cultural diversities. We offer programs from the preliminary program right up to PhD levels. This is the USP region. So if you don't know, we're 3 times the size of Europe. 12, and I'm proud to say that, but yes. So just to give you a fair idea of what the USP region is all about. You know, I thought this was important because for you to, well, Fiji, because we're the main campus, I thought that I would play this video just for you to give a fair idea of who exactly we are. I'm trying to avoid the whole tourist approach. And that's what I tell my students as well when they study abroad with us. So this is just, I like David Talan's video on just giving you an example of what Fiji is all about.
When you hear Fiji, you probably imagine this. Lush green landscapes, brilliant beaches, towering palm trees, and water dripping straight from the coconut. But this is not Fiji. This is Sister Visiwanga, aka our Fijian mother. She is the lemonade queen, the ultimate master chef, and the original washer and dryer. We adore you, Mother. This is Chief, the leader of the village, the protector of the inside from what is out. With his acceptance, we're granted access to his village. 6 houses, 40 people, 1 bathroom, an endless supply of lemon tea. We thank you, Chief. This is Uncle. Uncle wakes up at 2 a.m. to begin spearfishing for his family. He's pretty good at it too. He never stops working, he sweats a lot, and is Elvis on the guitar. We respect you, Uncle. This is rugby. Whether by land or by sea, it is the sport that turns boys into men and turns Americans into mush. We fear you, rugby. And this is the floor. This is where meals are prepared and then shared. This is where practice turns to performance, and where we lay our heads at the end of a brutally hot and humid day. We are unceasingly appreciative of you, floor. What makes Fiji truly beautiful is not the resorts, beaches, or pina coladas. It's the people. It's the rugby. It is the floor. Now this is Fiji.
that is just to give you a fair idea of who we are really. So when we talk to our international students who are coming in, we're telling them, please do a bit of research, know about the country you're going to, know about the culture, the things you are supposed to do, things you're not supposed to do. So these are some of the things that we show them as well. So I wanted to share very quickly, very briefly, because I know I have a short time, the psychological framework of our Indigenous people, our Indigenous students, how they think, or when they travel to your universities, what would you expect from them? The priority for us at the International Office of our administration is sustainability of our heritage and Pacific consciousness, to make sure that we, as we teach or as we help our students, that their heritage is very important to them. So this is how I was brought up. If you look at the video, there's a village setting. That's my background. That's how I was brought up. So I was brought up sleeping on the floor. We have like 10 people in our home. That's the Pacific culture for us. So we are basically community-based people. As individuals, we have a collectivistic culture. And so as individuals, we have, in our cultures, as individuals, we have our ethics that we are required to follow, traditions. Our wealth really is, in different countries, they have measurements of different wealth. Ours is our family. In Fijian, we say, "Numuya no wakani." In English, we say, "Your wealth is your family." The culture is very important to us, and important to our students. It's about the functionality, their roles and responsibility in the society. For example, my role as a mother, my role as a wife, as a daughter, and as a granddaughter. Our culture is also about a life of service where we help each other. So we try and serve each other, serve our family and our friends as well. Of course, the most important for us is spirituality, where we call out either we're Christians, we call out our ancestors to help us. That's very important to us as well. And of course, family obligations. You will see this a lot. And I know in most of our cultures, when it comes to family obligations, we're required, for example, we are required in our culture to look after our parents until they are old, very old, until we put them in the ground. That's our culture. That's family obligations, of course, and our elders give us ancient wisdom. When I put it in such a way that ancient wisdom is intelligence to do with our work, or whether you're a good fisherman, or whether you're working in an office, but ancient wisdom is to do with the way we should be living. So that is the psychological framework of our students, Indigenous students. Our student support. Now, our student support is designed in such a way that to make sure that we hold on to our inheritance as well. So we have a course, it's called Pacific Worlds. This is basically covers what it means to be a Pacific Islander and what it means to us. And of course, it's about Pacific consciousness and sustainable thinking. And we encourage community outreach programs. For instance, when we had the volcanic eruption in Tonga, our Tongan community, our Fijian community all got together to make sure that we can support our Tongan brothers and sisters. So also, student inter-campus mobility. This is cultural. As much as we have exchange with our other partner universities in Australia, New Zealand, and maybe under ISEP, we also have inter-campus mobility where we can send, for example, a student from Samoa to Fiji, and from Fiji to Samoa. We'll learn each other's cultures as well in that way. Student exchange, of course, this is something that we encourage our students to participate in, where they can learn another culture and, of course, appreciate their own. And, of course, in terms of support services, we have market days where you display the local art and craft. And, of course, food. Food is very important to us. If you're taking me out for coffee, remember there has to be food. And, of course, we display our culture through dance, music, and even the clothes that we wear. This is what I'm wearing today. This is a speck of our culture. Of course, we have counseling services available on campus. This is part of the student support that we have. It's more client-based counseling. We go back to what our ancestors taught us or what our spiritual guidelines are. And our counselors work according to that. But this is something that we have on campus as well. It's based on their belief systems or based on their psychological framework. I think that's the answer I'm looking for. We have a chaplaincy office. It's chaplain's office, so that's typo error. It's focused on the spiritual aspects of our students, example, Christianity, Hindu, and Muslim. We respect all religions on campus. And of course, religious groups on campus. And the other thing is different ethnic student associations. On campus, we have the Samoan Students Association. It's massive. And they just get together and they have their own lunches and they do their own dances together. It's amazing. And so these support groups, because we come from like I said, community-based, these support groups, they work together. Some of our challenges, just from the challenges, we have very limited funding in terms of inter-campus mobility and student exchange programs. Our students in the rural areas, in the very rural areas, they struggle when enrolling in universities, which is why we've introduced semester zero. So we give them a transition for like 6 weeks to make sure that they get familiar with internet, computers, and laptops. So basically, our students don't have those privileges back in their villages. So some of the challenges as well, if they're thrown into an individualistic culture, what I mean to say that is our students need to learn to adjust to this as well. They need to learn to adjust to this. So it's because they've always been developing themselves in a community. And when our students struggle when they're on their own. But what we encourage our students is that when they travel abroad or when they study abroad, they need to create their own groups. That's why we have support services for them. And also it's a cultural shock for them as they adjust to a new environment in developing countries. And some things that we also might have challenges with, and I'm hoping that I'm here that I can maybe get some help from some of your universities who maybe have better resources or have ideas on how we can monitor our students better who are sent on study abroad programs. So these are some of the challenges that we have. Our hopes, I'm finishing off now, don't worry. Our hopes is to strengthen our own foundations first. That's a hope for me as a Pacific Islander. What we do is that we take our whole self to our learning environment. We incorporate what we believe in and our culture and identity, and we take it wherever we are. It's the Indigenous psychological framework adds value to cultural capital of the learning or working environment, and I think that's very important. It's also using our culture to make a difference. And I think these are some of the things these are our hopes for our students when they go and learn and they come back, or when our students graduate. The main idea for our students is that when they finish up their studies, they're willing to give back to their own communities and to their families. I'll give you an example. If I had to live abroad, whether I was in Australia or New Zealand, there's one thing is for sure, I will always give back home to my family. That is the way we have always been brought up. That's the way our culture describes us like that. Yeah, so thank you, and vinaka vakalevu.
Kia ora no. You probably looked in the program and saw Ed Tuari as the person supposed to speak, and I'm not Ed Tuari. So I'm a late replacement for him. I'm actually not a replacement for him because he's quite an amazing character. But my name is Craig Rope, and I work for the same organisation, Education New Zealand. In actual fact, I have a colleague here from our Washington DC branch who's coming here for a couple of weeks. So I'm doing this, I don't have a presentation, but I'm just winging it. So our government agency tries to work with international market and is the glue between the universities and other educational organisations, trying to bring international students here and also students abroad from here overseas. So I work for the government. Well, I haven't come with the government hat on today. I've actually come on with my Indigenous hat. So I'm an Indigenous Māori person. As you heard, I'm from the Whanganui River. And I come to this space to talk about a few ideas. Just to set the scene, what's the status of my tribe, etc., my family, for instance. Majority of those socioeconomic. Most don't have the access to tertiary education. We all have access to primary and secondary education. That's I'm talking about immediate family here, my cousins, etc. and it's not widely liked. So it was really interesting you showing that video, because when I looked at that video, I started to think, wow, what an amazing cross-pollination of culture and experience for the Americans. And then I started to think, what gains are there for this Indigenous tribe? What gains are there, apart from financial potential? What gains are there in that village? What cross-pollination are they getting from culture-wise, or how are they growing, etc., and leaving? And so I started to think about the reciprocal nature of meetings. So I started to think about Indigenous communities and what reciprocal gifts are we giving to these exchanges. And as universities, what are we exchanging directly from Indigenous to Indigenous communities, or are we talking about students that are enrolled, which is a minority in your universities? Remember, not many Indigenous people, in my context, go to university. So it's almost like a gated kind of community there, where universities with funding, etc., don't have access for Indigenous people. And we are crying out as Indigenous people, as we always have, to go abroad, as we always have, great navigators. But where we are now, through post-colonial, we don't have those means to venture into the world anymore. So it's a bit of a conundrum, really. It's a bit of a paradoxical aspect of universities wanting to do good, to involve Indigenous people. And it's interesting, I look at our Indigenous panel, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm an imposter here actually. I'm not from this tribe here at this location, and you start to ask, why am I here? Are we going through the right processes to get a real Indigenous viewpoint? I actually did ask, much of a microphone, but our ceremony, I said, do you go to the Indigenous panel? No. So you should come along. It's your voice that we need to listen to. We need to learn your, how do you guys say, your nature? Your space. So I'm asking questions around how do we, as universities, organisations, actually interact. What are some of the customs that we need to go through and be mindful of? I'm so glad that you did a WIATA this morning, for those people who did that. That would be a real missed opportunity, but it almost didn't happen. So it's those kinds of questions around when we're visiting, are we really involving ourselves in that Indigenous space? Are we really appreciative of trying to give back? And as you said, that cultural experience. You can throw questions at me at this time if you've got any comments around that. But my space here is to ask those questions. Are your programs and are your engagements really giving back to those Indigenous communities, and how are you connected? We are very much wanting to connect Indigenous communities to Indigenous. And I pose another question about perhaps the university that has a lot of access to funds and access to international travel might want to link these Indigenous communities and then step aside. And let them set the agenda, let them set their autonomy, let them set what their engagement is. So I think universities and other organisations need to be mindful about the power of balance, about how they set the agenda. All in good meaning, meaning really well, don't get me wrong, but sometimes meaning really well can just be letting go of control of those situations. So that's the kind of message that I just wanted to bring today, because we as Education New Zealand are trying to connect, which is a WIPSI conference in Adelaide, to meet some Indigenous communities, and no Indigenous communities here, and we're just trying to look how do we actually connect those. And there's a lot of funding through universities, but they are not matched. They're not under any university umbrella or any qualifications authority. Okay. So that's all my quarterly was that. It's all right for winging it. Yeah. Just lastly, I mentioned Du Bois, really interesting, Washington DC fellow. Just through the interaction that he has on a weekly fashion with our organisation back in Wellington, how much he's learned and appreciated those things for our New Zealand culture and Māori culture, how well versed he is in Te Reo Māori compared to people who are here who actually are well versed in Te Reo Māori and our tikanga. So those are the kinds of things that we hope with the university University is bringing that space. You can ask some questions at the end. That's all from me. Kia ora. Tēnā. 5 minutes.
How do I get to the other? Oh, is it up here? Here it is. Never mind. I got it. Yeah, I'll show that in just a minute. So, Nistuni taniku misami sepis sakumapiaki. I am not native. I gave I texted my research partner in Amskapi Pakani Blackfeet country this morning, the woman who gave me that name, and I said, can I introduce myself this way? Just to bring a little credibility. And she said, sure. And she said, here's how you do it. So I had to write that down. I'm here with my colleague, Coy, who is Coy Harwood, who is doing a lot of, the son of my research partner, Kim Paul, who would love to be here and wasn't able to because of some health issues, but she will come back. I'm going to follow my fellow panelists' lead here, and I've really I've loved listening to both of you. This is the first time I've been this far south from where I live. Been pretty far west, went to Mongolia a few years ago with a bunch of Indigenous students. And then this opportunity came along, and so I'm really pleased to be here. And thank you, Craig, for talking a bit about acknowledging the people of this place. I don't know how to do so properly, so I'm following in your footpaths, your footsteps there. So I'm from the Native American Studies. I'm not from there, but I work in Native American Studies at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, where there are 8 nations, indigenous nations in Montana. It's around about 13 tribes and as many languages and a whole bunch more dialects and things like that. So we at Montana State University, we're in a part of the country that doesn't actually have any reservations, the names of those places where tribes have been relegated to over the history of colonialism. And so it's a challenge sometimes for us. We feel like there is an international exchange process that goes along with the getting to know and building relationships with the tribes in Montana. And so I've spent most of my career actually as an educator trying to do that, trying to figure out how do we logistically do this, how do we reach out, how do we become relevant to the people to the indigenous people in the state. And I am happy to say that I love my department. I love the people I work with, and I feel like I want to share a little bit of them with you. So following Lillian's footsteps, I'm going to show you a little short video, give you a taste of the sights and sounds of the place where we come from, where Coy and I come from, and then I'll try to speak to a few other issues. Turn that up a little.
MSU's American Indian Hall, a promise kept and a dream fulfilled. Today, I am just so proud to say, mission accomplished.
It's the president of our university. She's from Puerto Rico.
The eagle is a major element in our culture. And what it did is it dropped a feather as it flew by. And it came to Montana State.
Dennis Sunrose,
It's a proud
the
moment for all of us. It's been a long journey.
designer of our new building.
We
This
are
is my
soon
department chair.
to see it at an end when we open the doors. In many ways, it's not the end of a journey, it's the beginning. As we walk through those doors, we'll bring in our young people, our students, and they'll be beginning their journey. And someday they'll look back and they'll recognize how important this day was, as I'm sure they already do.
This building behind us on this great institution's property is a place that I think holds their hands out to the Native American people around this country, Montana and around this country. It says welcome.
That's our senator, John Tester.
Access to culturally relevant resources and spaces helps students succeed, especially students like me who didn't have a family or friends or classmates to blaze a trail for them. This space will cultivate mentorship that many Native students need to advocate for themselves here on campus and to adapt to college life.
I want to thank everyone on behalf of all the Native students here, we're all around, that pushed for and contributed to this home for us.
Bless everyone attending this grand event. Always fulfill their every dream and hope. Let them welcome today and tomorrow with joy and confidence to our home, planet Earth, and to all its peoples. Give peace. Ma'hel, hear this prayer of my heart. Ma'hel na henahane, nita vinan hisania. Mitch, it is finished. Let everything be as I have spoken.
And that's Henrietta Mann, who was a professor for many years at University of Montana and then with us as our endowed chair, Montana State. She and the chair of my department, Walter Fleming, actually came to Waikato University more than 15 years ago to visit. So I am also following in their footsteps and here sort of trying to do my best to represent them in a good way. I'm going to switch over, whoops, where would be, sorry, trying to find the other image. I'm just going to go through all of these. Not there, not there, not there. There it is. There we go. So I guess I'd like to say that our experience with Indigenous student exchange, because that's my focus, that's my interest in being here at this conference. This is an opportunity to talk about that with the larger global audience, which is wonderful to be among you all. I know that we have an international student program, a study abroad program. I don't know, and I say this honestly, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I don't know if they've done any actual outreach with Indigenous students. I know that Kim, my research partner and dear friend, would love to see students like her, like the person that she was, you know, when she was struggling to obtain her degrees, she has a Master of Science, she has a PhD almost, because she has, and this goes to some of the things that Lillian said, she has so many responsibilities to her own community that she hasn't actually, as a, how old, 60-something? 60-something-year-old grandma and a bundle holder for her, a ceremonial person for her own tribe, she hasn't had time to finish her degree. And so I think to her and people like her, there is this sense of these things are so unattainable. It's so sometimes just out of people's somewhat like your story this morning, that you just can't even imagine yourself even going to the college that's in your own town, let alone the college that's in another community or the university, let alone one that's, you know, across the world someplace. So to be able to open up these kinds of doors, I think is super special and important. This is something, and I'll kind of finish with this because we could talk all day about all of the wonderful opportunities here. I've heard a couple of people mention WIPSI. We have been working for the last number of years with WINHEC, the World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium, and I think they always hold their conferences together. Our department, not our university, but our department went up for WINHEC is an international Indigenous accrediting association organization. It's amazing, run by all volunteer people. Some from here, Maori I know are part of the founders of WINHEC, all the way to the Sami people of Norway. And a lot of people across Canada, fewer people within the United States. So we're really proud, I guess, to be able to say that we have finally, after how many years, been able to earn at least a provisional accreditation, which we're honored to actually have with WINHEC. This is one of the things that they have you do as when you're going through the accreditation process with WINHEC. It's nothing like the usual accreditation process. There are no boxes to check other than those that you set for yourself. So that's what they ask us to do, is to set our own goals, our own standards, identify our values, identify what, and this is most important, sort of the heart of the work, is what is our model of student well-being? And so we labored over this in particular for probably 6-8 months. And this is the outcome of many, many hours sitting with each other, not just faculty, but staff. We are unique in our university in that Native American Studies has both academic and student support. So there's two sides of our house. There's nobody else on our campus that does that. There's a centralized student support program. And when the next incoming provost, as they always do, asks us, why is there student support services associated with an academic program? My department chair says, why isn't there one associated with every academic program? so he doesn't get very popular right off the bat with the provost, but that's okay. So we work really closely with, and our new building, which has been, we've been a program for a department for 20 years, and we're a program and just a center for 25 years before that. We were in a kind of an ugly old building on campus, and our student support center was in the basement on the north side, which in our part of the world is the cold side of the building, right? It's the cold and dark side of the building. And so we're really excited and really happy to be in our new building. And we're also really excited to welcome other people into the new building. We actually just had a group of Maori students who are in Montana right now. I don't think they're exchange students. I didn't get to go to it, but they presented. Anyway, this piece was developed with faculty, staff, not just our faculty, from other departments as well, staff and students, most importantly students. This is really the brainchild and heartchild of students who sat amongst each other and said, this is kind of how we feel about our experience. And so I'm going to explain this just real quickly, and then I'll shut up. This is, if you were able to stand or hover over a lodge, also maybe more popularly known as a teepee, and look through the hole, this is what you would be seeing. Not this exactly, but this is what this is meant to be, is to be the lodge, so the place where home is. But that getting there, you have to come in through the eastern door. They're oriented toward the east, and you come in with the one thing that you have, which is your own story. right? You can't necessarily come in with anything else but your own story. And so this is how our students have helped us to understand what their experience is of higher education. And we love this because it feels like it's translational to students coming from anywhere. That we all just come in with our own story, and then we are on a path that, and students might be coming in any place really, but we're on a path of connecting, of acknowledging the land in particular, and acknowledging the people for whom it is ancient territory, and whose ancestors are there and have been for thousands of years. We're locating ourselves not only in terms of the place, but in terms of the laws. And that's not only for us federal Indian law, but it's Indigenous law. More importantly, it's Indigenous law. And then have of that connecting and the understanding that comes with that, we begin to form a communal story. We begin to have that shared story, because we've got people, as all of you do, who come from all sorts of different places, all sorts of walks of life, all different ages, different tribes, different non-tribal communities. And through that connecting, there's a sense of healing, of creating relationship, and through that healing, of actually getting people out on the land. So that's one of the things that we find is super important, is actually getting our students, connecting with their own Indigenous students in particular, but everybody really, connecting with things physically, right? Being in the place, actually getting to know the place where you are, going on around and so this continues. You can probably come up with your own ideas of what the rest of this looks like. I think the important sort of, no pun intended, take-home story is that once students are at the middle, at home, which we hope that they will be throughout this process, but maybe connecting more with that as they get toward the end of their college career, that they are giving back by that time. So this notion of not only building and developing of relationships, but of reciprocity, of being able to give back, to mentor new students who are coming in. So we think that this is sort of translational to anywhere and any experience. And I just wanted to share that with you as part of what I can say, not being very new to ICEP and to the work that you all are doing, and very impressed with it. And so thank you for having me, and I'll pull it back over to the panel and any questions that any of you may have.
It's perfect timing. We've got 15 minutes left for some questions. Comments?
Sorry, I was just going to ask you about the map, if that's all right. And whether you use this student wellbeing map to plot out points of student events and engagement and, I guess, programming to assist that journey?
That is a great question. Not yet. So one of the things that we just received our accreditation with WinHEC over the summer. It was put off, obviously, with COVID for a variety of reasons. And so one of the things that we have yet, one of the pieces of work that we have yet to do is evaluation. And we feel like this is a pretty great model for our own evaluation, like to what extent are we doing that? It's not a judgment on the students, it's a judgment on us. And so that is definitely that's one of the things that they've tasked us with, is to say, how do you take this and integrate it into everything you do, including programming, academics, hiring, how we write up our position, our position openings for new hires, everything we do, so that the Indigenous psychology, the indigeneity of the place and of our students is integrated into everything.
I just had a really interesting little comment, like, actually, I don't know if it's interesting or not, but it's really interesting about measurement of those things. We talk about in knowledge in not only the physical sense, but also the spiritual sense. And when Western organisations are wanting to measure, how do you measure, we call it wairua, the spirit within a person. How do you measure the spirituality of a whānau, of a family? I don't have any answers to that because I don't think there is, because you're talking about completely two different models. So you've got to take that into account as well if you're a university around that spirituality, which is something that we don't do very well in our education system. We don't like talking about spirituality. We like talking about cranial and academic sense stuff up here, not so much here. Yeah? Cool. Or hang on, there's a photo up there.
Thank you all for your introductions. That was really good. Myself from AUT, just it's great. But I was just looking at a framework, Indigenous framework. That was really, really interesting. And I like that. I was looking at it, I was like, is it a target? Is it a bullseye? What is it? And then when you said it was a lodge or a teepee, I was like, okay, get it.
And a path.
And a path. Yeah, and I was thinking of our own Indigenous frameworks in Maori. There's one that we call Te Whāra. Yeah, and it's basically physical and taha, tinana, taha wairua, mental, spiritual health, taha hine ngaro, which is mental health, and taha whenua, which is the land. And yeah, whānau and home and everything like that, and really similar. And I think that it can be applied not just to Maori or Indigenous, but for everyone. And for our international students, we take them through processes like this, and like Te Wharetapa, and also through the marae welcoming process that we have when we welcome international students to the marae. So I really, I think it's awesome.
Awesome. Hi, thank you all of you first for your presentations. I'm also going to talk about my questions about the framework. But to sort of build on all the questions that I've been hearing, I've been reflecting on how the title is Paths to Student Wellbeing, and when you follow the path and get to the middle, it doesn't say student wellbeing, it says home. And I just found that interesting. So I guess what that raised for me was like, oh, like, is home well-being, or like, are they the same? Are they different? I've also been reflecting, as I just heard, about some of the frames around health and what well-being is. We just heard like mental health, spiritual health, like home is with me, it's here. And that raised questions around, do we start off at home and this is the path back when we're broken away, or do we start at a place? So that's not a specific question, but I suppose I just like noticed that the title and the focal point are different wording, and I'm wondering if you see well-being and home as the same, or if there's an intention and path to student well-being versus, I don't know, just like wanted to open the floor. And that's most, I guess, like you are most directly involved in the framework, but would welcome thoughts from any of the panelists, given that crosses a number of the themes you've spoken on.
I'll just say very quickly, and then I would like to hear what you have to say, is that one of the things, so Sweeney Winchie, who has been to this, I think I'm not sure if he's been to this conference, I know he's got connections here. He's one of our colleague professors in the education department, and he has talked about and we use his scholarship as part of this. He's from one of the tribes in Montana, the Assiniboine and Sioux, and he talks about Big H home and Little H home. And so Big H home is their home, their community is their family, right? Because as you talked about, it's so collective and it's so community oriented, that psychology that where students are coming from, and so it's hard for them, right? It's hard for any of us, but it's especially hard for students who are coming out of that very community-based experience to come to a place that is so foreign to them, even within the same state, right, or in the same region. And so we can only aspire to be a home, And that is just a safe place, right? It's just a place where they can let down and feel safe and feel like they can get what you need, and whatever that means. Whatever that means.
That's a very good point and a good comment as well. Now, for us in the South Pacific region, well, I'll just say as a Fijian, when you're talking about land and environmental well-being, it's a holistic approach for us. It's home. So when we're brought up from as a small child, this is all taught to us in our homes, what we're supposed to be doing, the wisdom that's passed on. And when it comes to learning as well, what happens is that when it comes to learning, when you're talking about learning, we go to university where we learn, work, and go back and give back to our communities. So it's a holistic, and of course, and like you said, the spiritual aspect is very important to us. It's what defines us and who we are. So I think, so when you're talking about home and you're talking about, in terms of connecting and healing, for us in our culture, the culture has all the answers on how we should continue our lives. So that's just my point. I hope that makes sense.
Sure. My thoughts on that is Indigenous people, because they were the first people to come onto the lands, have a real common theme, and that is home is the land. So how do we look after the removal of people, the tribally based and communal, from those lands? And if we're talking about home and land being synonyms, and that's about well-being, what can we say about Indigenous people that are being removed from their lands? So not only from a collective framework now into a Western individualised framework, into a framework which is kind of nomadic, where we change with jobs from different place to place. We don't think of this land as Ngāti Whātua's land. My land is down by Upehu, and I was born into that land and have connections. I do, but many of my Indigenous brothers and sisters don't have that connection. So that's a question. Another question: how do we think about our Indigenous communities that have gone through all that trauma and been dislocated from that home, that land, and what status are they in? And so there needs to be a real recognition of the whenua, the land we call it, is really important. Part of that regeneration for us as Māori is through the Treaty of Waitangi and actually gaining some of that land back, not for the monetary value, for that land that we're connected to. So yeah, home is land.
Thank you.
What's the time?
Hi, my name is Lola Wokenir, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Outreach at Kennesaw State University. It's 30 minutes outside of Atlanta, so I'm very, very far, but I'm very excited to be here. It's my first time in this part of the region, so Lillian, I really loved the video you had there, I think, and I hope you don't mind. I looked over and I saw her, getting emotional. It was such a wonderful video. I know that's why I hope you don't mind, but it was a wonderful video.
True, I get emotional.
And it was great to be able to see it, especially for us that are so far away from our home, to be able to be introduced to, Fiji, or at least through that video. I like that it also said this is not Fiji, and explain what we think it is, but truly what it's about, which is the people. At our university, we have plenty of study abroad programs, not many to the Pacific, I'm sad to say, but within our study abroad programs, we try as educators to make sure that students are connected to the people, to the culture. But I do think that sometimes we lack, the ability to really make sure that students are not only, impacting their lives, but also taking something away, and that the people that they're able to meet and engage in are also getting something from it as well, that mutual beneficiality as well, right? And so how can we, as educators, as administrators, or within the U.S., make sure that when we have these study abroad programs, that we are really making sure that we are educating the students in a real way, but also making sure that it's that mutual beneficial way as well. Thank you. All of you can answer. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very great point, because that was something we had struggled with for quite a while when we were accepting students, especially from the United States or from very least from North America. So students, what we do is that when they arrive into the country, we run through a cultural program whereby we actually orient them. We provide an orientation, where they go visit the village, We brief them on protocol on what, for example, you're not allowed to wear a hat when you walk in the village. You have to wear a long skirt. You cannot wear anything that's too short. So we give them protocol before they walk. So we provide them all this information. The other thing I struggled with is that when it comes to international students, and I think this is something we need to also go and review when I go back, is that we don't want students to come to Fiji or come to any of the South Pacific countries and be a tourist. Because what they do is they go island hopping, backpackers. That's amazing, and that's good. That's good. But at the same time, we want them to get more involved, which is why we need to relook at how we are receiving them and what we need to do in order to make sure that they're engaged. And this is one thing we're familiar with the NCP scholarships, because they're required to do internships, community outreach programs, and that's part of the requirements. And I think that's some of the criteria that your university should set up as well. And it prepares them, like, have a criteria on what they're supposed to be doing when they're out into the country. Go into a village, live with a family for like a week or a weekend, get to know what they're all about. And I think this is also when you're orienting your students, it's also to prepare them before they even arrive into the country, or when they start applying, start getting to study about the place they're going to and what to expect. For instance, I always have a student complain about, the Wi-Fi is so slow. Nothing to Fiji. But these are things they need to expect, you know?
And aspects like when you're visiting, like in South Pacific, waiata songs are a form of giving. It's actually a gift. It's an exchange. So it's not something just to fall light on and sort of comical away or comedy away. It's actually something which is received as a gift. So if you're well prepped for that, you'll understand that. You do your research. One last one. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, one last one. Kia ora. Oh, geez.
Hi, I'm Ailsa Levitt from Pomegranate Global. Just a quick follow-up on Lola's question. So, and you touched on this yourself, William, in your talk. How have you been able to assess what the host communities, for example in the video, but in other settings, what benefits have they found from the experience of hosting international students?
So of course monetary is one thing, but the other thing is that our students in the rural communities, sometimes they want to see the world through the students' eyes. They want to be able, when they see a student come and he's studying, there'll be some sort of motivation to say, okay, I think I can do this too, I can travel. So it's a bit of give and take as well, you know. So we have students who come in, they talk about where they come from. I've had a student from France who's actually lived in one of the villages, been there for like 6 years. He speaks the language so well. He's doing his research. He's managed to help students get on scholarships and travel abroad. So these are some of the incentives that our students get, because these students are so real, they want to get involved. And so these are some of the things that our students can benefit as well. Well, these are the ones I can think of at this point. There's more. Okay, in case they
I'm just going to draw to a close because of the time and I've been waving the finger outside. We're going to finish with a waiata. These guys actually don't know that I've set this up, so we're going to do a waiata. So E2, so you just no, you stay.
No, it's done.
So you just repeat what I say and then sing it back. Okay? Here we go. E toru ngā mea, ngā mea nunui, e ki ana, topai pera, waka pono, tūmanako, ko te mea nunui, ko te aroha. Koutou he karake mo te wakamuti mo tēnei wā. Imi ia ki te uri tapanui, ki māte, te māma, ka nāpau, te tina nā tu aitua aratagata. Koe ara, e ono waka ire ke rungi ake nei, tuturu o butu waka maua ki a teina, haumi e hui e, kia ora. We can come and talk to people.